for free. One more time, you can find that offer now at getquip.com/facts. Quip. Simple. Rewarding. Better.
It could be the most important vice presidential debate in the history of the United States. Mike Pence and Kamala Harris set to face off in their debate in just a couple hours. CNN's Kyung La joins us from the debate site in Salt Lake City, Utah. Kyung, you asked the Harris campaign how concerned they are about Harris's potential exposure to coronavirus in tonight's event. What did the Harris team have to say?
Oh, this was during an on the record call with reporters ahead of the debate. And the Harris campaign just decided that they didn't want to answer this question. It is an issue because you've heard our own Sanjay Gupta talking about those plexiglass dividers and how they're effective against droplets, not necessarily aerosols. That's not the intent. And so the Harris campaign says simply it is their job to debate. It is the job of the Cleveland Clinic to keep people safe. Here's a snippet from that call.
I would say, look, Senator Harris is taking her job seriously for tonight, and our expectation is that they are doing the same when laying out those guidelines.
Harris will continue to debate, to continue to campaign after this. Jake, the campaign has said that she has taken this virus seriously from the very beginning, as has Joe Biden, and that they will continue those best practices of social distancing and wearing masks. Jake?
All right, Kyung La, the Cleveland Clinic didn't exactly bathe itself in glory last debate. Joining us to discuss tonight's debate, CNN political commentator Bakari Sellers, also author of the book My Vanishing Country, and joining us as well, CNN political commentator Scott Jennings, former special assistant to President George W. Bush. Good to see both of you, gentlemen. Scott, let me start with you. President Trump, 74 years old, battling COVID. Vice President Biden, 77 years old, has also had health issues throughout his life. Has there ever been a more important vice presidential debate? Theoretically, both of these candidates could find themselves having to lead the nation.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Trump is sick and Biden's no spring chicken. And so I'll certainly be watching closely tonight. And look, you know, even if the Trump or Biden were to go through a whole next term, you know, there'll be an open seat if it were Republican second term, and there could be an open seat if Biden chooses not to run again. And Harris, a lot of people think, is sort of his chosen heir apparent. So both candidates tonight, I think, have big plans for themselves. And yeah, I agree with your assessment. It's an important debate.
And Bakari, there's also this other guest at the debate, coronavirus. We hope not actually physically present, but at least theoretically. Given the outbreak at the White House, given the plexiglass that's going to be on stage, it's going to be hard for the virus to not be the number one issue. Do you think that Kamala Harris has to walk a line here in terms of expressing concern, but also criticizing the administration? Because, I mean, the president is physically in harm's way right now.
I don't think it's on Kamala Harris to walk a line. In fact, she's debating the chair of the coronavirus task force. And on his watch, we've had this devastation. Look, I'm someone who probably wouldn't win out on a debate with the campaign. I understand it's the job of the Cleveland Clinic. I appreciated your remark beforehand, but I think that Mike Pence, due to the fact that he was in a COVID hotspot, when we've seen so many people in and around the president, should be quarantining right now. You know, that's my personal opinion. I pray for the safety of everyone involved, not just the moderator and not just Mike Pence, but of course my good friend Kamala Harris as well. I mean, you are debating in the same room, in an enclosed room, with someone who has been exposed to coronavirus from multiple sources and who hasn't taken it seriously and who hasn't quarantined. I mean, that's a very real thing. I think that is something that people will see on the stage. If Mike Pence coughs, I think that not only will Twitter, but the rest of the world will probably explode, just trying to figure out if there is something, what is there. But at the end of the day, even more importantly, this administration has the albatross of not just Donald Trump, but their mishandling of coronavirus, which she's going to have to expose tonight. I lean on your expertise, Jake, but you've moderated debates before, but I would assume that's going to be the number one issue of the evening.
Well, I mean, with more than 210,000 dead Americans and 7.4 million infected, yeah, I mean, I think it's the number one issue, even if there hadn't been this outbreak at the White House. Scott, let's talk about what the candidates bring to the debate stage. I think that if you were, forget the political positions he holds one way or another, just in terms of debate skills, Mike Pence might be the best of the four on the tickets. I mean, he has all those years doing talk radio that has really lent him some skill when it comes to communication. Again, I'm not talking about the content of it, but he's a pretty able debater, I think.
Yeah, he's a smooth operator and has a lot of experience being a governor and then obviously running last time around. So I agree with you. I think he does have a lot of skill. And look, it's on him to try to give the Trump campaign a winning day. I mean, I can't think of the last day when the Trump campaign would say they won a news cycle. And so just like in 2012 when Joe Biden showed up and whomped Paul Ryan, and just like in 2004 when Dick Cheney showed up and whomped John Edwards, tonight this incumbent presidential campaign is looking to the vice president to right the ship and to drop a little water on a thirsty tongue, which is of the Republican Party right now. So there's a lot of pressure on Mike Pence to deliver some relief tonight for nervous Republicans.
No question, although I do have to say, I think the biggest whomping in vice presidential debate history was Senator Lloyd Bentsen against Dan Quayle. I mean, that was just a destruction. And, for that, Lloyd Bentsen was rewarded with a trip back to the Senate, and Dan Quayle became vice president. Bakari, you are a supporter of Kamala Harris. She's had good moments in debates and not so great moments. What do you think is important for her to do tonight?
I just think she has to be magnanimous. I think that she has to show the American public that she can be president of the United States, is where we started this question. I do think that Mike Pence is a great debater, not just his time. You don't become governor and go to the United States Congress and be vice president of the United States without this skill set. We have to recognize that. But her years in the courtroom as a prosecutor will help her effectively, as we all know, as Kamala says, prosecute the case. One of my larger concerns, though, doesn't have to do with what's going on in the room, in the debate hall. I think they'll both hold their own. I think Kamala, though, has to overcome something else that no other candidate in history has, which are the stereotypes that are associated with the black woman on a stage like this. No one's ever seen what they're going to see tonight. And the way that it's covered, from the descriptions of her mannerisms to her tone to the way that she interacts with Mike Pence, all of those things are going to be analyzed through a lens that we're not familiar with. So she has to beat Mike Pence, and she has to beat the stereotypes.
Interesting. Bakari Sellers, Scott Jennings, thanks so much to both of you. Always great to have you on. Be sure to tune in tonight for the vice presidential debate between Mike Pence and Kamala Harris. CNN special live coverage starts at 7 p.m. Eastern. Yes, right now there are only 3 states in the United States that are actually heading in the right direction when it comes to coronavirus cases. Stick around. We'll cover that next. The national lead now. Warnings about the coronavirus pandemic getting worse in the fall months now appear to be reality. For the first time since late August, the U.S. is averaging more than 44,000 new coronavirus cases daily, as CNN's Erica Hill reports for us now. That alarming trend comes as Dr. Anthony Fauci is predicting this country could see upwards of 400,000 deaths if action is not taken soon.
Some New York City neighborhoods facing new shutdowns as positivity rates top 5%.
We need to stop this outbreak dead in its tracks for the good of all New York City.
For at least the next 2 weeks, gatherings, including religious services, severely limited. Non-essential businesses and schools closed amid concern and pushback.
So the mayor gets it, Chuck, no matter what happens. See, if we stop working, we don't eat.
Strict enforcement and steep fines also part of the plan. Nationwide, new cases are rising, averaging more than 44,000 a day, numbers we saw back in late August.
If you relax, this is what happens. This is not the feared second wave. This is just merely sloppiness on the part of government and people individually.
Just 3 states are moving in the right direction. About half are seeing new cases rise. Of those, 4 New England states are reporting a spike of more than 50%.
I continue to be concerned because, again, we're part of this region. We're not here on an island.
Boston just pushed in-person learning back to October 22nd. The Midwest, not looking good. North Dakota posting the highest number of new cases per capita for any state since the pandemic began. Wisconsin setting all the wrong records. The governor limiting public indoor gatherings to 25% capacity, urging residents to stay home. Tweeting, We have to change the course of this virus. It's one of 7 states reporting new daily highs for hospitalizations.
You have a lot of infections sort of built into the population by the time hospitalizations start rising.
Brown County hit particularly hard. The Green Bay Packers announcing the level of infection there is just too high to welcome any fans at Lambeau Field. Beyond the numbers, the daily reality becoming more bleak for millions of Americans.
Sometimes we eat, sometimes we don't.
Families struggling to eat, to pay rent, to find a job, as hope for any help from Washington fades.
Gets a punch in the gut. You know, what are you supposed to do? That's horrible.
We're all hurting. Every one of us are hurting.
And Jake, as we look at the sports world, just a short time ago, the chief medical officer for the NFL was asked about the possibility of perhaps the league pausing the season for the week ending on Sunday. 11 players had tested positive, 15 staff members. The chief medical officer saying every option is on that table. He said it's always been this way. That could mean a pause. It could mean other changes. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that.
I wish you had good news for us. Erica Hill, thank you so much. Let's bring in Dr. Richard Besser, who was acting director for the CDC under President Obama. Let's start with your reaction to President Trump, still contagious, going to the Oval Office this afternoon. A source telling CNN that White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and aide Dan Scavino, President Trump's social media advisor, have been with President Trump in the Oval Office today. What do you make of this?
Well, what I would love to see is our political leaders modeling the behavior that CDC, state health departments, local health departments are calling on everyone to do. And that's, if you're infected, you need to stay away from other people. And, Jake, for millions of Americans, that's not possible. People live in apartments with multi-generational households. For someone who has the ability to stay away from other people, they need to do that.
Meanwhile, the CDC director said that it is safe for Vice President Mike Pence to attend tonight's debate in Utah. I have to say the CDC's own guidance says, quote, stay home for 14 days after your last contact with a person who has COVID-19. We know that Vice President Pence was in the Oval Office with Trump last Tuesday, although nobody at the White House is letting us know when President Trump last tested negative. As a general note, given all the people in the Trump orbit who have now tested positive, I think we're at 19 cases, is it safe for Senator Kamala Harris or for moderator Susan Page to be on a stage with Vice President Pence?
This is one of those times where you'd like to see the CDC director out front holding a press conference going through this. So a letter from the CDC director says that Vice President Pence does not meet the criteria to require quarantining. That would mean that he did not spend more than 15 minutes less than 6 feet from someone who was infected. And given the number of cases that are now associated with the White House, with the Rose Garden, you'd really like someone to walk you through that to know that that's safe. The Cleveland Clinic is providing the guidance in terms of the setup for the debate, and the distance is great, the plexiglass is great, but you'd really like someone from public health to be out front answering questions so that the country can be assured that risk is really not there.
There have been presidential debates done remotely. In 1960, Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy were on opposite sides of the country, one in New York, one in Los Angeles. It could be done in different rooms, but they're not doing it that way. The candidates are going to be 12 feet apart, we're told. There's going to be this plexiglass between them. Vice President Pence's team did not want the barrier up. They actually even mocked Harris for wanting it. Does that plexiglass actually do anything?
Well, it's, when I read through guidance, it's not something that's there. There are barriers that are used, but, if it depends somewhat on the setting. CDC on their website did put up new information about COVID in the air, airborne COVID being one of the ways, not the primary ways, but one of the ways it can be transmitted. So you wouldn't want that to be the only protection measure you have. The distance matters. The fact that people are being tested matters. That everyone in the venue is going to be wearing masks, that matters. All of these pieces are part of it. And it makes me think, Jake, about all of the pieces that everyone around the country needs to be doing if we don't want those numbers you were talking about that Dr. Fauci is predicting to become true. They don't have to become true if we all take the measures to get this under control.
Don't you think that the Commission on Presidential Debates and the Cleveland Clinic, which is in charge of the safety, the health safety.